Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Deep Fried Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Fry, and thanks for listening. Today, I'll have a guest on, Grady Harmon. He is a sports blogger for the BSU Boise State Broncos. They had a great game this Friday night against Airforce, are now 4-0 with a 16th ranking in the AP poll. In the NFL, the Titans lost to the Jaguars on a lackluster Thursday night game. The Cowboys dominated the Dolphins. The Bills whooped down the Bengals. The Lions upset the Eagles in Philly. Patriots beat the Jets. Colts somehow got away to beat the Falcons. Vikings easily beat the Raiders. Ravens lost to the Chiefs. That was a pretty good game. The Packers beat the Broncos. The Panthers showed up without Cam Newton and beat the Cardinals. The Giants pulled off a stunner in Tampa Bay, winning 32-31 because Tampa's kicker just can't make a kick. The Saints beat the Seahawks in Seattle. Texans beat the Chargers in Los Angeles. The Niners had a nice win, 24-20 in San Francisco against the Steelers. And the night game, the Rams beat the Browns in Cleveland. If you thought the Browns could win the game, you don't know football. But let me get to this. My guest today is Grady Harmon. He is a sports blog writer for Boise State. Grady, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
This last week was awesome. I went to the Boise State game with my family against Airforce. Compared to the last Boise State game I went to, it was very competitive. I saw them play Colorado State last year, and it was 35-0 at halftime, so we just kind of left and snuck out of there. But against Airforce, it was a really competitive game. You were there with your family, right?
I was, yeah. We were sitting up in the nosebleeds for that one.
Well, anywhere is good for a Boise State game. How did you like the game?
We loved it. I thought the atmosphere was really good. The people I was with were wondering when people were going to show up, and I said, well, it should be a pretty good crowd, and then midway through the first quarter, it's pretty packed. And then with all the hype with the new black uniforms and seeing an Airforce team that was supposed to be pretty good coming off a win off of Colorado, and whoever won that game was in the driver's seat for the mountain side of the Mountain West Conference. So it just kind of was a big game all the way around.
Yeah, they beat Colorado, a Pac-12 team. That's pretty impressive. And then for Boise State to take care of business like they did, I have to say, they're looking pretty good. And I believe they're ranked 16th. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think they deserve all the hype that they can get right now. I think they've kind of benefited from some of the other teams around them losing. Many people don't take in consideration these two polls, but I'll take a top 15, top 16 team any day of the week.
That's awesome. So I've noticed this year for most of the games that they kind of start out slow, and then the second half comes around and they take over. Are they like a second half team this year?
I don't know. I kind of hope that they are, because games are won in the second half. They don't finish the game in the first half, so each game they've been behind. They've never scored first. So they have 4 come from behind victories, which kind of ranks them in the top 3. And there's only 3 other teams that have done that and are still undefeated. And, I give a lot of credit to their coaches. Jeff Medding, their first year defensive coordinator, he is kind of new to the Mountain West, obviously, coming from Eastern Washington. His in-game adjustments are lights out. They have only let up 9 second-half points all year, and those 9 points came against Airforce. But, I'd rather them be a second-half team than kind of have that momentum fizzle out, and then they're playing catch-up or trying to hold teams off in the second half.
I totally agree with that. The game is won in the second half, and if you're not a second half team, you're probably not going to win too many games. I'm really, really loving watching Hank Bachmeier this year. He's pretty darn good. I think he's a true freshman, right?
He is a true freshman, yeah.
So is he the real deal or what?
I think that's still to be determined, but through 4 games, I really do think he's the real deal. We've been, as Bronco fans, we've been kind of watching him all year last year. We were really hyped when he committed, and then we were kind of, all our eyes were on that quarterback battle. We thought maybe that he would beat out Chase Cord, because Chase Cord wasn't, coming off that ACL injury. He wasn't going to be ready the first part of the season, and then going into the fall, we never heard who's the starting quarterback, and I always thought as the battle goes, the longer it went, the more chance I think Hank had to be the starter, because you see that potential, and you've got 4 years to work with him. But, man, through 4 games, he looks really good. I think he takes some hits that he shouldn't, but, part of that I think is he makes some reads a little slow, but I think that'll correct itself as he gets experience and gets comfortable with the offense and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember in the first half, he ran right into a big tackle, and I was like, oh, man, you got to be careful. And he could have easily avoided that with a little bit more experience and knowledge of the pocket. But, man, that Hightower, he's really good. Do you think he's an NFL prospect at wide receiver?
I mean, he could be. We've had some good receivers in the past, and, they haven't really manifested themselves in the NFL, but he's definitely got the speed, and I think he's got the hands, and he's got that big playmaking ability that I think teams want. But I guess it just let's see how the rest of this season goes, and he'll have to perform well in like combines and pro day and things like that, I think, to get a shot.
So who's the leader of the defense this year?
Man, I think that is still to be determined. I think Curtis Weaver, 99, the stud end, is kind of our dude. He's probably the best player on the field each and every night. But as far as like the vocal leader goes, I think David Moa, the senior defensive tackle, is a big one. He's in his 6th year actually at Boise State. He had a medical red shirt last year coming off a calf injury, and so he's kind of like, this is my last ride, this is my last rodeo, so I'm going to give it all I can. But he's a big force in the middle there. They're still looking for that big kind of playmaker in the back end. We had our safe DeAndre Pierce go down in that first game against Florida State, and he hasn't been back since. And he kind of was a big leader in the secondary. So our secondary, I think, is still trying to find their leader, trying to find a playmaker back there. But as far as the front 7 go, I think Curtis Weaver and David Moa and Satane Louie, kind of are all big dudes right there in the front that are huge for the Broncos.
Yeah, Louis, I think, had 16 tackles on Friday night, and he was one of your spotlights in your rundown, so that was a pretty good call there. Do you think BSU can run the table this year?
I think they can. Will they? I'm not sure. They've, had kind of a history of having that hiccup game where either they're favored by a bunch and they just don't perform well, or, they get bit by injury bug or a turnover bug. There's always that one game. Airforce in the past has been that game, so we're kind of past that hurdle. I was just looking at the schedule today. Other than BYU and Utah State, all the other games look pretty winnable, and I was looking at some StatCast for, with the probability of winning, and outside of those 2 games, their win percentage chance is like over 80. So BYU is a big game around here. Some people don't like to call it a rivalry. I don't know why. I think it's a rivalry. We play them every year. We just extended the series another 9 years. But they've showed big promise, like beating USC, but laying an egg, this last week against Washington. But that's always a big game, especially down in Provo. And then Utah State at the end of the year, November 23rd, that's another away game at Utah State. They're supposed to be pretty good. Jordan Love, their quarterback, had some Heisman hype around him. Hasn't quite lived up to that this year. Late November in Utah, that could be a snowy one. But that probably will be the division title, if you will. Like the winner of that game is probably going to go represent the mountainside of the Mountain West Conference in the championship game. So outside of those 2 games, I really don't see them stumbling this year. We got the benefit of the rotating schedule with the other half of the Mountain West, with the west side of the division. We don't have to play the San Diego State or the Fresno State. Instead, we get San Jose State, which they beat Arkansas last week, which Arkansas is an SEC team.
Yeah.
But, San Jose State, we keep trying to think, how could we kick them out of the league, because they're not good at all. And we get Hawaii, and Hawaii's always, that's kind of a grab bag, but we get them here in Boise, so that's not as big of a hurdle as if we were to travel to Hawaii and all the hoopla that goes with going over there. But so outside of those, BYU and Utah State, I really think we have a chance.
I think they can do it this year. Definitely those 2 road games against BYU and Utah State will be the challenge. Hopefully they can get through both those teams and go run the table and get a big bowl game, which brings me to my next question. Will a small school ever get a chance at the NCAA Championship?
In its current format, I don't think so. I just saw a stat the other day. So when BSU had its kind of run where they went 28-1 in 2-3 seasons, they were ranked number 2 in the nation. And before they lost to Nevada on Black Friday, we still cry over that loss today. But I think in the new system, UCF, had that same record, and they were ranked 15th going into last week.
Right.
So I don't really think there's much respect for that, for the group of 5. But, outside of the top 10 teams in college football, I think there's not much difference between, 11 through 25 and the top teams in the group of 5. But, unless they go to 8 teams where there's kind of an automatic qualifier from the group of 5, I really don't think a group of 5 team will ever get into the college football playoff. The top group of 5 teams, Power 5 teams, don't want to schedule them because there is that chance you could lose.
Right.
And why would you take that chance against a group of 5 team? And so the group of 5 team is left playing, the Marshalls or playing the Arkansas, which aren't very good, or your Power 5 teams, you have to schedule out 6-7 years in advance. And that's what we saw with Florida State like 6 years ago when we scheduled this thing. They were coming off a national championship. Like, that was huge.
Yeah.
But fast forward 6 years, and they're not that good.
Right.
So that weight doesn't hold. So I don't really think under the current system, any group of 5 team will ever get a chance. But if they do, I hope Boise State's the first one to get there.
Absolutely. I really hope they expand the playoff to 6 or 8. I'd be fine with 6 and having the best 2 teams in the nation get a bye. Then you could have one team from each of the Power 5 and the best group of 5 team get in. And I think that would be a really good first step towards fixing this thing, because I'm sure getting tired of Clemson and Alabama every single year,
Right, sure. And I think they did a good thing by throwing the group of 5 that bone with, the top group of 5 gets a New Year's Six Bowl. I think that's a step in the right direction because you get to see these, I guess, quote-unquote, mid-major schools go up against the big boys. But the 6, I agree with you, have the conference championship, champions play, and then that one group of 5 team, or even 8, and having a couple at-large teams so you could have those, like if Notre Dame had a really good season, or Georgia and Alabama could make it, instead of just the winner. Because, not always is the conference champion the best team in the conference.
Right.
We saw that, just a plug for Boise State, we saw that last year in the conference championship game. 1 or 2 things go our way, we're the conference champion and not Fresno State, but they're the conference champions, but so that's what I think.
Well, before I let you go, Grady, I want to ask you, have you been watching the Cowboys and Kellen Moore calling plays down there?
Oh, man, I don't have an NFL team, but, man, the more Cowboy games I get to watch, the better. It's like the Broncos South. All those guys, all the BSU ties, is so cool. And it's so cool to see Kellen Moore, who is such a staple in this community. I mean, I've got a friend whose son is named Kellen after Kellen Moore, and just seeing him succeed is so cool. I'd love to see him have his own team someday, but, I think he's the kind of guy that's not going to outkick his coverage, if you will, and will only go for that next step when he feels ready and he feels like he can succeed. But, man, the Cowboys, they look good. Last week playing the Dolphins, the Dolphins are terrible. Like, they're not going to win a game, but still putting up 30 points. He's got that team really humming right now. He
was teammates with Dak before he even became a coach. So, they've got a good relationship already supplanted in the team. That offense looks great. They had 2 running backs with 100 yards rushing on Sunday with Pollard and Ezekiel. Dak didn't even have to do much. So I really think Kellen Moore has got a really good system going on, and I see some future success with him. Well, Grady, thanks for coming on, and I really appreciate your input on Boise State. You are definitely my BSU expert, and we'll have to have you on again soon, okay?
All right, thank you. And go Broncos.
All right, here's Krissy with the news.
Thanks, Jack. So we're going to talk about Antonio Brown and him saying that he's not going to be playing in the NFL, making the announcement via Twitter just 2 days after the New England Patriots released it. Brown also called out his former quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, Fox Sports co-host Shannon Sharp, and the Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, in a series of tweets on Sunday morning. quote, will not be playing in the NFL anymore. These owners can cancel deals, do whatever they want at any time. We will see if the NFLPA hold them accountable. Sad they can just void guarantees anytime on $40 million, 2 months. We'll see if they pay up, the former wide receiver said on Sunday morning. He posted screenshotted news headlines on Twitter from articles that highlighted previous accusations of sexual assault towards Roethlisberger, as well as former NFL tight end Shannon Sharpe. He also posted on Twitter that Patriots owner Robert Kraft, who pleaded not guilty earlier this year to soliciting prostitution. Brown recently deleted all of the tweets regarding Roethlisberger, Sharpe, and Kraft. His tweet regarding Roethlisberger said, Steelers QB investigated in sexual assault, while writing above the photo, quote, 4 games for Big Ben, crazy world, I'm done with it, end quote. The NFL suspended Roethlisberger for 4 games in 2010 after he was accused of sexual assault earlier that year. The DA said Roethlisberger would not face criminal charges. Brown also posted a screenshot of an article mentioning previous sexual assault allegations, including Sharpe, while writing a caption above the photo, quote, Shannon Sharpe, the funny guy on TV still after this, end quote. Sharpe responded on Twitter by saying, Clowntonio69 out there dry snitching on everyone.
My goodness, this guy has just completely lost his mind. I don't understand it. He went from the most talented, high-flying wide receiver in the league to out of the league in less than a year. This is ridiculous.
Right, and if that wasn't enough, 2 women have come forward with allegations of sexual misconduct against him. His former trainer, Brittany Taylor, filed a civil suit in South Florida federal court over allegations of sexual assault. A second woman, a painter, told Sports Illustrated that Brown exposed himself to her while she was working on a mural at his home in Pittsburgh 2 years ago. Her legal team informed the NFL of intimidating text messages sent to the woman from Brown, which seemed to expedite his release from the Patriots.
Man, he's got some serious mental health issues. I hope he seeks help and isn't too proud to ask for it. And what the heck? You go to the Raiders, you get paid, you get everything that you want, and then you just weasel your way out to the Patriots. You play 1 game, and then they fire your ass. Now all these allegations are coming up against you, and you're throwing stuff out at other guys like Roethlisberger and Shannon Sharpe. What the heck does Shannon Sharpe have to do with any of your problems, Antonio Brown? You're being stupid and ridiculous and naive. Just get your life together.
He's being a child. He's basically pointing the finger saying, well, he didn't get in trouble, why should I? The problem is Antonio Brown is not only a clown, he is a straight up clown shoe. He has nothing to offer any team right now. His skills are alright, yeah, he's good, but his mind, he has completely lost it. So in my opinion, he's done. He's signed back up for college. He's going to be doing 4 online classes at Central Michigan, which doesn't really impress me very much, but his whole career is pretty much done.
T.O. didn't go out this bad, and I love me some T.O., but man, I do not love me some Antonio Brown. As talented as he is, he's just such a sideshow, and hopefully it's over.
We can only hope. In other news, Detroit Lions legend Calvin Johnson said he smoked marijuana after every game of his NFL career to avoid rampant abuse of opioids in the league. Johnson told Michael Rosenberg of Sports Illustrated in an interview released Friday that he used pot as a healing drug each week, but other pain relief options were readily available for players. Quote, when I got to the league, there was an opioid abuse, he said. You really could go in the training room and get what you wanted. I could get Vicodin, I can get Oxycontin. It was all too available. I used Percocet and stuff like that, and I did not like the way it made me feel. I had my preferred choice of medicine, cannabis. Johnson, who shocked the NFL world when he retired after just 9 seasons in 2015, said there was, quote, a very strong possibility he would have played longer if the Lions were a contender. Not really. The 6-time Pro Bowl selection responded when asked by Rosenberg whether it was a coincidence both he and Hall of Fame running back Barry Sanders retired at the age of 30. Now 33, the Georgia Tech product said he suffered at least 9 concussions during his time in Detroit. He also overcame countless other injuries en route to missing just 9 of a possible 144 regular season games, including 1 year in which he injured a foot, an ankle, and both knees. Bam! Hit the ground real hard. I'm seeing stars. I can't see straight, he told Rosenberg about his concussions, but I know in a couple minutes I'm going to be fine because I've done that plenty of times before. Johnson now owns a cannabis company, Primitive, with former Lions teammate Rob Sims and Locker Room Consulting, which is aimed at helping players with planning for their careers after football. He's hopeful a call from the Hall of Fame will eventually come, but he doesn't think that will provide the final verdict about the impact made in his prime, per Sports Illustrated. Quote, I was a beast during that time. I was hands down the best receiver in the game, he said. I'm not going to argue with you, but I know I was. Johnson was named a first-team All-Pro 3 times during a career in which he racked up 731 receptions for 11,619 yards and 83 touchdowns in 135 games.
You know, I remember watching Megatron, Calvin Johnson, play football for Detroit, and I always thought to myself, God, I wish he was on a better team, just like Barry Sanders back in the day. I mean, the guy had all the talent in the world. I remember when he came out of college at Georgia Tech, and I just thought, that guy is going to be good. Kind of the same way you knew that Julio Jones was going to be good. If he would have been on a better team, maybe he would have had a longer career, maybe he would have had better stats, maybe he would have had a Super Bowl ring. It's really too bad. But just to hear this thing about cannabis and how it has healing powers, and he used it to avoid opioid abuse, which we know is running rampant across this nation, I have to say, we need to look more into that and try to figure out a way for these players and people of the United States to be able to use that in a medicinal way.
I think in the very least, if they're using it for medicinal properties, then they could definitely seek out CBD as some sort of an option if the THC in marijuana is the real culprit or the real problem. But if they were just to use CBD, I don't know if that shows up in their test or what it takes, but it's definitely something worth looking into.
You know, it's funny because he said that he smoked after every game. How did he never get tested or at least test positive for cannabis in his system? It's just weird.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I am definitely interested in finding the answer. I haven't found one yet, but maybe he'll eventually come out and tell us how he did it.
That's Krissy with the news. So it's been a good show so far, and I just wanted to touch on 3 of the football games we saw this weekend in the NFL. The Browns' 13-20 loss to the Rams. If any of you thought the Browns would win, you are sadly mistaken. Probably fooled by the media's push to make Cleveland relevant. Baker Mayfield is fool's gold. He talks a big game, but when in one, he cannot back it up. 12 of 13 when he got the ball out quick. 1 of 7 when his first option was unavailable. The offensive line is trash, so maybe he would be more suited to play better if he was more protected. The play calling is garbage, so maybe he would be more successful with a better coaching staff. But good QBs can overcome that. He's only in his 2nd year, so maybe the future is bright. But please, just hold off on telling me how great Baker Mayfield is. If it wasn't for the Browns' defense, this game would have been laughable. After all, they're playing the Rams, last year's NFC champions. They did go to the Super Bowl. Can you remember that? In the New York Giants game, the Giants won 32-31 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Daniel Jones got his first start. He was 23 of 36 for 336 yards, 2 passing TDs, and 2 rushing TDs. Impressive numbers, but even more so was they won after being down 18 points in the 3rd quarter. Not to mention they lost Saquon Barkley to a high ankle sprain. They had no rushing attack and still managed to find a way to win. Of course, it helped that the Bucs missed the game-winning field goal. Too bad because Jameis Winston was solid with a 23 of 37 passing game with 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. He finally got going with new coach Bruce Arians at the helm, connecting with Mike Evans often. Evans had a huge day with 8 catches for 190 yards and 3 touchdowns. I've always thought Winston had the potential to thrive, but not the work ethic or guidance needed to become elite. I suppose the book is still out on both Daniel Jones and Jameis Winston. Of course, Jones is a rookie, and hopefully for the Giants, this win is the first of many, and they won't be wondering by years 3 and 4 if Daniel Jones is their guy, much like Winston in Tampa Bay. And last but not least, the Eagles lost to the Lions 24-27. Are you kidding me? The Lions in Philly? Are the Eagles in panic mode after losing at home versus the Lions? They're 1-2 now, with a plethora of injuries. They had 7 drop balls and 3 offensive pass interference calls. Execution is key in the NFL, and the Eagles are not performing in that area. The Lions didn't do much on offense at all. Stafford was only 18 of 31 for 201 yards and 1 touchdown. They had no running game. Kerryon Johnson had 20 rushes for 36 yards. That's a 1.8 yard per carry average. I'm not really sure how they won the game, but they did it, and that's the Lions. I think this was more Eagles playing bad than Lions playing good. We'll see a true test this week for Philly when they travel to Green Bay for a clash with the undefeated Packers. Philly could very well be 1-3 going back home to play the Jets in Week 5. You know, folks, I think that the hype for Philly was a little bit overblown. I mean, yeah, they've got injuries, and that's holding them back. But I thought they were the most deep team in the league with a complete roster up and down, even backups. Doesn't seem to be the case. So we'll see what happens in the future. I have to add, the 49ers look awesome. 3-0. Jimmy G is awesome. The Niners defense actually looks pretty good. And their rushing attack is crazy. They've been running the ball all over teams this year with multiple backs in multiple sets. And they don't even have their starting left tackle, Joe Staley, a perennial Pro Bowler. So they're looking great. I think they have a chance to get to the playoffs, if not deep into the playoffs. Probably not a Super Bowl this year, but maybe next year. That would be awesome. Folks, it's just been a really good show. Thanks for listening so much. I'm recording this on Monday during the Redskins-Bears game, so unfortunately I will not have that ending for you. But it's Monday night, Redskins-Bears. Is anybody going to watch that? Well, yeah, of course. It's the NFL. Well, thanks, folks. Music has been provided by Ben Sounds. Oh, Ben! I love your sounds. They're fantastic. Thank you. Goodbye.